always go too far because that's where you will find the truth. Albert Camus. This quote comes as a prelude to a book discussion I want to go through in this episode. It's the book My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. It's a book about very intense experiences. It's a very well written book. It's a book about going to the extremes to realize who you are. It's an existential book. That's why I was reminded about Camus here, even though Ottessa doesn't really mention him, even in the YouTube interviews that I saw afterwards. So this is a book review, Ottessa Moshfegh, My Year of Rest and Relaxation. This is a Not Even Wrong podcast. It's January 31st, 2021. This is Krim Delko. Today's a Sunday. There's no update. And I want to jump right into the book that I just finished reading. So I want to talk about it. Ottessa is an extremely skilled writer. In my view, a very intellectually spicy, crisp, fast, entertaining writer. So first of all, kudos for the book itself. The title is terrible, and the picture. If you write a great book and you don't want to sell it, this is what you're going to do. You're going to choose the most annoying, boring title you could possibly imagine and put a terrible picture on the book. But that's okay. That's not her problem. She's an amazing writer. I think she, as a person, from the YouTube videos I can gather, comes across as a very timid, soft, and very gentle woman. But she has a monster in her, an intellectual monster. She's a verbal samurai. She's not just verbally very skilled. She's also incredibly intellectually skilled. So this is a you don't want to get into a verbal fight with this woman. She's a Black Belt JiuJitsu, verbal JiuJitsu person. So the book is about. I don't want to give away what the contents are, but it's about a woman that has problems with her past and that chooses to drug herself to sleep for a year and get rid of everything, basically renew herself through the cells that renew themselves and forget about her past and sort of become a new person. Hence the quote by Albert Camus, you have to go too far to find the truth. In this case, the protagonist is trying to undo herself, become herself, and become a new person. Throughout reading the book, you often ask yourself, well, why isn't she just killing herself? She doesn't want to live. She doesn't want to exist. Well, it turns out she wants to live. She just doesn't want to live in the personality that she is in. And there are some scenes in the book which show she's a very depreciating personality. She's had some bad experiences with her parents, with her boyfriends and things like that. So it makes sense that she's not happy with who she is, but she has an urge to live. And I think why was I attracted by this book, other than just the intellectual fervor and the verbal entertainment and things like that, the fun. It's a funny book. It's also an intellectually challenging book in certain ways. It talks about Manhattan in the early 2000s. I was living there. I was there. This was my first years living in the city, so I could relate to a lot of stuff that was going on in those times, including 9/11 and things like that. So, but here's what's really interesting. If you want to seek the truth in who you are and what you're really made of, you just have to go too far. You have to push the limits. You have to push the limits professionally. You have to push the limits athletically, relationship-wise, with your kids, with your wife, husband. You have to push the limits. You cannot rest. You cannot rest. Rest is not the state of nature that this existence that we're in, including the physical and the consciousness and everything else around us, humans, it's not possible. You have to push, and one way to push is to completely stop. And this is a contradiction. The book is full of contradictions that actually make sense. Death and life, betrayal and friendship, family and betrayal and hatred, love and hate, all these things. It's a complete, it is in that sense, Ottessa is a verbal jiu-jitsu black belt because she's using force against counter force. She's using whatever she throws at you. She then uses that punch to actually knock you down, in a sense, intellectually, by making you all of a sudden realize, wait a minute, it's not what I thought. It's the exact opposite. This girl doesn't want to kill herself. She actually wants to live. Her friend is not her enemy. She's not jealous. She's not competing to be better than her. She's actually trying just to live a better life and using her sort of as a flywheel to get to that better life. So there's a lot of contradictions, a lot of punch, counter-punch type situations in this book. So I think Ottessa, again, great writer. I don't know if she's a practicing martial artist, but she's using a lot of the martial arts techniques that we learn in jiu-jitsu and judo, where in particular use the opponent's force, use basically Newton's laws to your advantage. What does this book mean professionally? It's almost written in the subtitles, in the unwritten subtitles, or between the lines, excuse me. It's about really pushing the limits and sometimes standing still. This is what the hedge fund business needs. You can't always go forward. You sometimes really have to stand still. You have to think, renew yourself. You have to literally do what the protagonist is doing here. Try to undo and unbecome who you are, and then become somebody new. I think it's possible. I think we have so many hedge fund managers that get stuck in their past and over decades keep doing the same thing and not making money, and desperately trying to, they go on Bloomberg TV, and it's almost sad to see those middle-aged and then old men talk the same thing. You have to undo yourself. You have to renew yourself. You have to either go forward or stand still, but you have to go too far. You have to push this envelope that you're given every time, all the time. And that's the challenge, because of course, that sounds very easy. You go push the envelope. I don't know, what does that really mean? Put a lot of risk in your portfolio? Buy the most crazy biotech stock you can find? No, of course not. Because like I said in one of the previous episodes, the objective of a hedge fund manager is to maximize returns, maximize wealth. In our case, which is our mission, is to generate wealth. It's not to have high returns, but actually generate wealth, and under the premise of survival. This is something we sometimes forget, and it actually applies to this book very well. The protagonist goes to extremes, but makes sure she survives. She does very crazy things, but she makes sure she survives. That's the premise here. It's predicated on survival. If you don't survive, it's really not worth it. Then what's the point? And to some extent, reading the book, it took me almost 2/3 of the book to realize, wait a minute, why isn't this woman just killing herself? What is this? This is a self-indulging nonsense, drugging yourself, sleeping, trying to do what? Just kill yourself. Well, then I realized, wait a minute, she wants to live. She just doesn't want to live the way she wants to. She's what we call in Silicon Valley, she's pivoting. She's pivoting in a very extreme way. Some of this is intellectually challenging and entertaining, and maybe in real life it could have been done easier, but it doesn't matter. That's not the point. The point here is that Ottessa is creating a character and a scene where your existential fears and your existential questions of why do I live? What's the point of living? What's the purpose of life? She does that very well because she takes away money. Money is not a question here. There's inheritance, there's things like that. So what do we really try to achieve in our lives when the existential necessities are gone and we don't have that purpose of survival for the sake of survival? What this protagonist is trying to achieve is a life which is beyond necessities. She doesn't have money problems. And also, she doesn't just want to survive for the sake of survival. She's not the kind of druggie that just drugs and drugs and drugs. She actually goes to extremes to renew herself. And that's very laudable. that is actually a good thing. Renewing yourself, pivoting, is a much better state of nature than vegetating in something that doesn't work. This is very applicable to business, in particular to hedge fund managers. The purpose of this podcast is to give people a sense for what it feels like to run a hedge fund. This is the message, number one, if not the most important message for life, but definitely for the hedge fund business. If you see that something doesn't work, then change. You can't think yourself into a situation that doesn't apply to the reality. In other words, if it doesn't work, if you don't make money with your ideas and your approach, then change. You can't force the world into your situation. Right now, we're having the situation with Robinhood and all this short squeeze stories. It's terrible. It's terrible in many ways. It's an existential crisis that we have at Orange Capital Partners in two ways. Number one, are the markets completely out of control? If the markets are out of control, we are playing in the markets. This is our livelihood. So what does that mean? Our livelihood is being put upside down by either a mob of crazy retail investors, or even worse, by, like I said in the yesterday's episode, probably it's much more sinister than that. It is an algorithm that is created by big money suit hedge fund types, who then are using this mob and the lack of controls and the leverage that platforms like Robinhood give to exacerbate certain trades that they want to realize. No matter what, if valuations absolutely have no more reason, if generating wealth in the market becomes a pure game of algorithms going wild, then we have to pivot. It's an existential crisis. And that's fine. In this case, we stand still. We think, okay, what's going on here? It's going to go away. It's going to go away either because it's going to fix itself like the markets do, or it's going to go away by destroying the markets, and then we don't have markets anymore. And then we have a problem that we have to think about in the future, how we're going to deal with financing and Wall Street and all that. Wall Street has survived over centuries. I don't think that social media and algorithms will kill it, at least not in this form. So we're just going to stand still, and again, we're going to incorporate this. This is just another algorithm. This is just another algorithm. We're gonna have to swallow it, the same way we have to swallow Bitcoin. It is a reality. It's happening. There are people who are buying this because they expect other people to buy it, and everybody expects the price to go up. This is the tulip mania in pure form, and it happens. These things happen, and it's part of the market. We can't think it out of the market. What we believe at Orange Capital Partners is that you can generate wealth by investing in fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices with large impact, that people can change the world by making products and services, in particular using Moore's law to their advantage to really make things, and typically what that means is generate more value and lower the price for that. So this is democracy. This is real. This is the reality of how business and capitalism helps the world, and why it's a good thing, and why we're not in the zero-sum game. These things like the Robinhood, GameStop, Bitcoin, these are zero-sum games. These are sad examples of how human nature is. Human nature is inherently either very progressive in the sense of David Deutsch and the beginning of infinity and creative, or it's a zero-sum game where we just want to buy something which is scarce, and the earlier we get in, the more we can then convince others to buy it, so we get richer. That there's no value added in any which way for anybody in that form. So I'm just putting this out because this is the existential crisis we're having right now. We're having an existential crisis. We had a similar existential crisis about 1.5 years ago when WeWork was supposed to go public. Again, this was probably one of the first little quakes that we are now seeing, the big earthquake, which is how can a company which has no business model, which makes no money, which is a pure narrative of gibberish, for lack of a better word, have such huge valuations. This is not good. This is not healthy. We are concerned about Uber, DoorDash. These companies make no sense in the current form. They might succeed. They might succeed. For example, Uber might succeed if they really manage to kill every form of transportation that exists right now, then of course in the end you depend on them and they can raise the price and make money. If DoorDash really succeeds in killing all the small restaurants and sort of just lives and the world turns into dark kitchens, and we just see a lot of delivery people go back and forth, and maybe in the future drones, if this is the future, well then fine, but on the way there we're going to have a lot of blood shed, and this is not capitalism at its best, this is capitalism at its worst. So these are all existential crises that we have, and I'm mentioning all of this because Ottessa's book gave me the power and the reflection and the reason to reflect on, okay, what are my existential fears? Do I need to go and sleep for 6 months? And maybe not literally, but maybe sometimes it's healthy. That's why we travel. We're gonna go on a trip soon. We do a surf trip in Southern California. We're gonna go to Texas. My son's gonna go play some soccer there. These are all things that are similar in the sense that we want to stand still for a while. We want to let ourselves renew and see how we can deal with these existential fears. We have also the opposite of existential fears. We have the progress, the optimism. We have every time I read and listen about what Elon Musk is doing, I get positive about things, and that's a good thing. So it's not all negative, but there are, like I mentioned, a few of the negative things. What's going on with all this short stuff, the short squeeze stuff, companies that are public that shouldn't be public. So there's a lot of SPACs, the special purpose acquisition companies, are very scary, very bad situation in the market, also creating, in my view, a huge distortion of valuations, of processes, a lot of bad things happening around the SPACs. Hopefully it gets washed out. The market has this ability to renew itself like a body, and like a body we can sometimes get cancerous and then we can die. So hopefully the market, the financial markets as a whole, are able to withstand all these cancerous movements and keep going. Us, Orange Capital Partners, we're dependent on the financial markets. We are still within the context of the financial markets. We haven't opted out, and we hope that we can continue doing what we're doing with the financial markets. There might be a way to generate wealth outside of the financial markets. Right now, that is not feasible. It's very expensive to do that. It's much more efficient to use the financial markets to generate wealth than to do something else. That's why companies like Tesla and hopefully soon SpaceX are public. But again, there are cancerous movements, there are destructive movements, and we as a hedge fund need to be aware of those. So to summarize, Ottessa Moshfegh, the book My Year of Rest and Relaxation, it's in my view fundamentally a book about existential fears and the need to define your existence, to have a purpose and find a way to get to that purpose. This is the key. Thank you.